Of Manitoba's 52 provincial parks, the Whiteshell is one of the most heavily used year-round. The park is located about 100 kilometers east of the city of Winnipeg and is accessible by the Trans-Canada Highway or by Highway 44. In the heart of this busy park is a small core of wilderness known as the Mantario Wilderness Zone. Here, but for a few rare exceptions, human travel is restricted to non-motorized methods only. Hiking, paddling, and cross-country skiing are the only ways the public can access this area, which consists of 12% of the park. Motorboats, snowmobiles, and all-terrain vehicles are not allowed in the park, and airplanes need permits to touch down on any of the lakes. There are no roads, no power lines, and no cottage communities.
Well, I've been coming to the Wilderness Zone in the Whiteshell for, well, really 25 years. Paddled all the lakes in this area. I love coming here because, you're away from motorboats. That's the main thing. You're away from cottages, and you get a chance to experience the Canadian Shield in the way that, it's been for millennium.
Many visitors to the area, such as hikers on the Mantario Trail, which winds right through the Wilderness Zone, are constantly impressed with the rugged beauty of the seemingly untouched boreal forest.
Well, we were actually just commenting at Mantario Lake there that it's nice to be able to get to a place that you had to hike into, that there's really no other way to get in here. So I guess in that sense, yeah, we like to be a little bit away from civilization and cottages and all that kind of things.
I think it's great.
I do too.
Because it's cleaner, it's nicer, it's
for
hiking,
people
it's nature.
Yeah, for people that like to get out.
I actually like the concept of a wilderness zone because it seems like it's been there for so long, and you should just leave it alone. We've taken over most of Canada with our traffic, and we might as well leave at least a few parts of it that are still gorgeously untouched there.
It's nice to, if you want to enjoy the wilderness, not to be, hop in the lake for a morning swim and have somebody on a Sea-Doo blaze by you or anything like that. And you notice it in the water too. Like you can see 20 feet down in here. I can see like lures people have lost on the bottom.
The nice part about being in the wilderness zone here is you don't have the sound of vehicles or power boats or anything, and there's also a lot less people, and you're truly in the wilderness because there's no roads or anything anywhere near here. So it's true wilderness. You can hike for days without even seeing another person sometimes if it's during the week and that. So when you don't hear the vehicles and maybe the odd airplane or something like that, but that's about it. It's pretty nice.
It's easy to think it had always been untouched wilderness, but human footprints have industriously crisscrossed much of the Whiteshell Park, including the now designated Wilderness Zone. Here, on the shores of Indian Lake, remain the boats from a fly-in fishing operation. The roar of motors are now silent for the most part. Ray Nielsen, a lifelong member of the Manitoba Naturalist Society, recalls the rare occasion when paddlers would see motorboats in the area.
The only motorized vehicles I've seen have been motorboats to the flying fish camp that is at the end of the lake, and that one was grandfathered in. I do believe that should be done now because the plane company that owned it has been sold, and I don't think they have the legal right now to come in, but I may be wrong.
Eldon Lepke first saw Lake Mantario on a fly-in fishing trip in 1963 when he was in pursuit of lake trout. Later, when power toboggans became popular in the 1960s, Lepke, a supervisor for Manitoba Hydro in the West Hawk Lake area, returned for ice fishing with a group of locals. In 1964, Lepke and his friends came upon a trapper's shack on a small island in the southeast corner of Mantario Lake, where today stands a Finnish sauna, part of the Manitoba Naturalist Society's Wilderness Education Center.
4 of us slept inside that little shack. And the 2 of us, we drew names. Me and a friend of mine, ex-RCMP by now. Him and I had to sleep outside in a tent. Mind you, it was only 30 below, so it wasn't too bad with a 5-star eider-down sleeping bag. No problem, except going to the bathroom at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Lepke and his friends were the first of many ice fishing enthusiasts to explore the more remote lakes by power toboggan, once known only to loggers, hunters, and trappers. In the 1920s and 30s, trapper Jack Gray wandered across rock outcroppings, creating ghost trails that now form part of the Mantario Trail. From the late 1930s until the 1970s, Alec Kolansky trapped in the area. Today, the ruins of one of his winter cabins can barely be found, concealed deep in a swamp of Labrador tea. All that remains of his industry is a stovetop, a tin pot, and a jerry can. Meanwhile, just 2 lakes away, today's trapper Cliff Brook carries on the trapping tradition in a newer cabin on Indian Lake. But this tradition may end with him. In the 1970s, the Manitoba government's Department of Natural Resources realized the need to properly manage land use in the Whiteshell Provincial Park. Already, the park had about 3,000 cottages, many well-used campgrounds, trails, and road systems winding through the park. Then, someone proposed to build condominiums on the shores of Big Whiteshell Lake. This proposal stirred up controversy among cottagers and motivated park staff to devise a master plan for the park. As always with such plans, the department consulted the public, and an idea to set aside some of the park for a wilderness zone came up.
It was an idea that was felt by people involved in developing this plan as something that was very worthwhile pursuing. So we adapted that as an objective that we were going to pursue in developing this plan.
The idea of a wilderness zone proved to be quite popular among a number of groups. For example, the Manitoba Naturalist Society had already been running a wilderness education summer program out of the old cabin on Mantario Lake since 1974. They had taken over the cabin built by Eldon Lepke's acquaintances when the Manitoba government offered it up to a group that would make use of it for the educational and recreational benefit of the public.
It would be fair to say that people who were associated with the environmental community and involved in the Whiteshell Park were very supportive of the proposal for the wilderness zone. But people who engaged in motorized activities in that part of the park were not in favor.
People who had traditionally had the use of the entire park for snowmobiling and I guess skiing and all manner of things, fly-in fishing and everything else, mounted a campaign to stop us from providing this wilderness area.
Part of that public debate was a rather high-profile snowmobile rally that took place on Mantario Lake. It was so big, it made the front page of the Winnipeg Free Press on February 21st, 1983.
They were in a feisty mood. They were good outdoor people, happy to see the minister come because they were going to have a chance to get at him, sort of thing. But generally the mood was not too combative. I made it clear right away that I understood their concerns, but I explained that, look, we weren't taking away their snowmobile privileges in the whole park. It was only 12%.
In the end, after all the consultations and the protesting, department officials concluded the plan, which was formally approved by the government in 1983, with certain exceptions for trapping. The plan states that once the current trapline license holder stops trapping in the area, that harvesting activity will be phased out. Among those who visit the wilderness and enjoy traveling through it today, the different philosophies of land use are still apparent.
There are a heck of a lot of deer out here, and I think the reason is there's no hunting, so obviously they don't have any natural enemies. But at the same time, it's great if you just want to see some wildlife, if you want to immerse yourself in nature and just get away from it all. I think it's a good idea to have. I don't think they should have wilderness zones all over the province. Just have selected a few of them here and there, but I think they are a good thing in small numbers for sure.
I think trapping done on a small scale is sustainable. I wouldn't really condone it myself, but you know, I don't have a problem with what other people do in the wilderness zone, as long as they don't bring in snowmobiles. because snowmobiles do bring in pollution and they're loud. And I think for this to be a true designated wilderness zone, you can't make exceptions.
Change will still happen with or without human presence. John Gray, a forestry consultant who has traveled extensively in the Whiteshell Wilderness area, says fires, windstorms, beavers, and infestations such as spruce budworm all contribute to natural disturbances that cause the life cycle of the boreal forest to happen.
All of these sort of disturbances change the forest and make it something of a dynamic arrangement of trees and vegetation, wildlife, and so forth, opening up areas for wildlife, edges of forest, which are important for wildlife in many cases.
Change is inevitable. Those passing through the wilderness zone can expect to see something different with each passing year. Today, the 63-kilometer Mantario hiking trail offers outdoor enthusiasts a challenging adventure through the boreal wilderness. While actual statistics of users are not kept, I counted at least 25 people on the trail during the September long weekend in 2008. The Manitoba Naturalist Society still runs its annual summer program, now entering its 35th year. According to M&S office records, between January 2005 and October 2008, 755 people passed through the wilderness zone to visit the Wilderness Education Center, either as part of the summer program or as independent visitors to the cabin. The fact that this is a non-motorized area still matters to people more than 25 years later.
The draw for me to come out to the Mantario cabin would be, I guess, the peace and quiet that you get, the fact that you don't get a lot of motorized vehicles or boats, the hunters. It's a lot more eco-friendly, and just it's a nice challenging trip into the cabin, and then once you get to the cabin you get the comforts of home.
The difference between these lakes and the lakes where motorized boats are allowed is just incredible. You know, it's really, really amazing how clear the water is out here, and as soon as you get motorized vehicles in water, sediment just boils up and the lake's completely different. So these shorelines are pristine, and a lot of the ones in more populated areas are not, you know. And it's incredible too when you come through Mantario and you come in through the lakes. As soon as you hit the wilderness zone, there's this sharp boundary between being polluted and murky, and then clear and clean.
I think it's really important to have designated wilderness areas and protect places like the Mantario Trail.